money. Hanoi, the Vietnamese capital, is renowned for its congested traffic. The government wants to build a third ring road around the city. But it doesn't have enough money for such a major project, with 2 other ring roads already underway. Some of the construction is being funded on a BOT basis, build, operate, transfer, whereby the investor constructs and maintains the ring road and gets the toll revenue for a certain period before handing it back to the public, and official development assistance from the Japan International Cooperation Agency. However, private investors aren't too much interested because the expected returns on investment are too low. How can the government increase the returns to make the investment more attractive to private companies? The Asian Development Bank Institute, or ADBI, recently looked at how to persuade private companies to invest in such things as new highways, railways, and dams. Private investors usually avoid big public infrastructure projects as the returns are not very attractive. But governments don't always have enough money for such big projects. One way for governments to attract private investors is to share future tax revenues with them so the returns on investment are higher. Governments need to recognise that the projects create beneficial economic spillovers that can be tapped to attract more investors. A new highway might lead to new businesses and new jobs. These new economic activities would, in turn, boost government coffers with revenue from taxes on property, income, corporations, and sales. The Tokyo-based Asian Development Bank Institute, or ADBI, has pioneered research into this type of financing. Researchers looked at increases in tax revenue from project spillovers in Japan, as well as developing countries such as the Philippines, Uzbekistan, and India. They found that after a spike around the time of construction, it usually takes a few years before much income starts flowing to tax collectors. ADBI Dean Naoyuki Yoshino and Grant Stillman, the Institute's legal advisor, have recently argued that gaps in funding for infrastructure can narrow if governments accept that future revenues can be fairly shared with private investors as incentive. Such forms of financing are promising for developing countries in Asia. They have huge infrastructure needs, but they have so far not had much success with private-public partnerships, sometimes known as PPPs. Dean Yoshino says he recently discussed how to attract private investors to big projects with Lau Ming-tu, Deputy Governor of the State Bank of Vietnam, and Eric Sidgwick, ADB's Vietnam Country Director, in Hanoi. He also spoke on the topic during a visit to the central city of Da Nang.
In the past, private-public partnerships failed in many countries because private finance could not receive enough return from infrastructure investment. In other words, most of the infrastructure, the return comes from user charges, such as highway tolls or water bills. And those are regulated by the government because it's a public goods. So infrastructure investors could not keep enough rate of return. That is one of the failure why PPP was not so successful in Asia.
Here's where future spillover tax revenues come in. Dean Yoshino believes that they can be used to make the rate of return more attractive to private investors.
And my idea to increase the rate of return is to utilize spillover tax revenues along highways and infrastructure. In more detail, if water supply is doing very well, then the property value will go up. And then private industries come to the region and factories can be set it up because enough water is running. Then the tax revenues in the region, such as corporate tax revenue and property tax revenue and sales tax revenue will increase. And if part of those tax revenues were returned to private investors in addition to user charges, then they can keep on collecting revenues every year as long as those tax revenues keep on coming. And that will enormously change their revenue patterns. And the head of the ADB in Hanoi was very much glad about my idea. In Hanoi, they are planning circle road, ring road in Hanoi. However, private sectors are reluctant to invest in there because of low rate of expected return. And government does not have enough money to construct ring road in Hanoi. If my proposal can be implemented, then ring road would create huge employment and business along those ring road in Hanoi. Then the tax revenue will keep on coming who constructed those ring road, and private sectors would be willing to invest in there.
Dean Yoshino says he has since given his presentation to the World Bank and the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. The response has been positive.
Especially in World Bank, some of the tax specialists were very much interested in my idea. So we will discuss how it could be implemented in some of the infrastructure which World Bank is now planning to. I hope Vietnam will try to collect money by introducing my way of ideas, and hopefully it could be stepped to the next level.
That was Naoyuki Yoshino, Dean of Asian Development Bank Institute in Tokyo, talking about how to attract private companies to invest in a new ring road around Vietnam's capital, Hanoi.
This has been Asia's Developing Future, brought to you by the Asian Development Bank Institute in Tokyo. See the show notes for the transcript and related material. For more information about us, please visit adbi.org.